Well, I have this tradition around Halloween where I spend an entire month watching horror movies. And somewhere around September 2007, I was sitting there watching Child's Play and I suddenly started comparing characters from the film to Sonic characters. This character association thing that I do is a common factor in the development of many of my parody comics. And if I'm going to parody a movie or whatever, which Sonic character will fill which role? So this Andy Barkley kid from Child's Play is this whiny little pissant who has a materialistic obsession with getting his doll for his birthday, and right away I compared him to Chris Thorndike, the spoiled little rich kid from Sonic X. And then the real winner, Chucky Knucky. They rhyme. I thought that was a really good touch, and it wasn't the most creative thing in the world, but I liked the symmetry. And the idea of a serial killer trapped in a doll's body versus a sociopathic echidna, something just clicked. After that, the ideas just flowed in like one giant epiphany, one after another. And man, was I laughing my ass off. I was going over things in my head like one after another, like how the characters died, what parodies are being made. I mean, it all just fell into place. Well, most of the material in the Knucky comics is parody, so yes, I do pride myself when I come up with an original idea or a joke that I think is really good, but most of the time I get big laughs when I take some pre-existing material and twist it around. A perfect example, I think, would probably be the scene from Knucky'S Playtime 2, where Tails is mimicking the scene from The Dark Knight, where he's like all gross and grotesque. He takes off the Power Ranger mask, and he looks like the Joker. With a little careful tweaking of the dialogue and a hideous drawing to complement it, I think I created something uniquely comical but enhanced with a familiar scenario. I never planned on doing any sequels when I first drew the first Knucky Playtime comic, but the first one, when I drew it, it got such a huge response from the people on DeviantArt, and by the time Halloween rolled around again in 2008, I started thinking about the possibility of doing another one. I didn't want to simply rehash the slasher parody formula from the first comic, and I didn't want to limit myself to Sonic characters either. So I started with the parody of Resident Evil, which quickly crossed into Scooby-Doo, then Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. And they came in to get the killing started, and this is pretty much what I considered the first act of the comic. The second act revolved around horror parodies involving Nintendo characters. These inspirations didn't flow as naturally as the ones in Part 1, because these killings had to be more sequential, and they needed to build up to a third act where everything escalates into like a total frenzy. And I really had to be more creative with the writing, if creative is the right word, choice of word in this instance. I think it was towards the end of the book the good characters and the bad ones kind of clash, and through the use of magic wands, more and more characters poured into the brawl. I think there was about 25 characters on each side, and like one giant splash page that I did right near the end of the book. I think that was the high note, and I decided to go out on it. I ended the book with a cliffhanger parody of the Mortal Kombat movie. All the time! Man, that creepy face Tails made during the Joker parody, Ella getting barbecued by the flamethrower in part 1. Oh, and let's not forget Amy's premature reverse birth in Mr. Nice Guy. There are definitely times when I gross myself out and just say, Jesus Christ, that is fucked up. But I always laugh like crazy, so that pretty much justifies the material for me.